Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, so you want to make sure our shed is to code. How does sound work? My coworker took a long break and said she didn't care if I did the same. So I did. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. So you want to make sure our shed is to code. I love malicious compliance. Our neighbor reported our old, but sturdy, shed to the city for being too large without a permit. Inspector comes out, measures, nope, the shed is well under the size limits and doesn't need a permit. Husband starts asking questions about the rules and gets all the specifics on what is allowed. The shed is old and very basic, why not have a bigger, better shed? Oh, and by the way, the inspector knows the neighbor, she used to work in the planning department, knows the rules and clearly was just trying to make trouble, her MO. He looks into her property and says he can see a good half-dozen issues if we'd like to report them. We laugh, but nah, we're gonna go the malicious compliance route. We rip down the shed, hoping neighbor is smugly gloating to herself. We do nothing for 3 weeks, well except draw up plans, buy material, lay the foundation and line up a couple construction friends to help. Then one Saturday our glorious big new shed goes up. Now we hadn't heard from this neighbor in the 3 weeks, but now she's asking about our new shed, she'd love to see inside if we don't mind. We did. Cue another inspection notice for building a granny flat, the shed, on our property. Obviously the inspection goes fine. Well, except those violations on neighbor's property. That unpermitted open fire pit built right against the retaining wall and fence is a concern, we don't want it burning down our new shed, haha. She's got a couple guys out there right now jackhammering out concrete. I think I'll go offer them some cold drinks from the mini fridge in the new shed. How does sound work? I work as an audiovisual tech at a community college. Basically deal with sound systems, projectors, microphones, etc. I joke that anything that plugs in on campus that's not a computer, that's my gig. We get occasional requests for sound systems in bigger classrooms and common areas. Not hard setups at all. Someone wants to make a presentation and they want to be heard clearly, so we'll set up a microphone on a floor stand, usually above a podium or desk, and run cables to the actual sound system, which is usually an all-in-one unit that has the amp, equalizer, and speaker all together. Set up on a tripod in the corner of a room, it can easily be loud enough for a room of 100 people or so. Anything bigger and we adjust, by adding a second speaker or giving them a beefier system with separate components, amp, equalizer, input boxes, etc., on a cart. Even for bigger sound systems, they still don't really take up that much space in an area if you know what you're doing. This happened years ago, got a request from a communication arts instructor, a speech class. She wanted her classes to experience what it would be like to speak in front of a larger audience, so she requested a microphone for a larger classroom that we had, an older, simple lecture hall that held about 140 people. She was having a few different classes all show up at the same time and place, so the room would be packed. I called and talked with speech lady about the specifics for her request, letting her know what the setup involved. This isn't that big a deal, I just need a microphone. One microphone, she said, a little snotty. I started to explain that for a room that size, with possibly over 100 people attending, she might want to make sure they're heard and go with the bigger system. Oh, we don't need all that other stuff. Just a microphone. One microphone. That's it, nothing more. I was getting instructions for my job from someone who actually taught how to give a speech. I hesitated one last time, starting to tell her that for a sound system to work, you actually need things like speakers and cables and nothing else. Just the microphone, with a slightly shouty Karen-esque voice. Is this where I say, cue malicious compliance? Day of the event arrives. I walk into the room, weaving in and out of students to get to the instructor, who was standing at a desk at the front of the class. I walked up, smiling. Are you Ms. Speech Lady? Oh yes. Did you have our mic? She said in an excited voice, ready to excite her students with sound. I held out a handheld microphone to her. Here you go. She took the microphone a bit gingerly, then I turned and started to make my way out. But I looked behind me and saw a speech lady, a person with a doctorate, mind you, looking at the microphone like it was some weird alien device. She started tapping on it, speaking into it, looking at the sides and bottom, then slapping it with her hand, blowing onto it, and finally yelling into it. I could tell a few of the students knew what sound systems were. They're not that hard, when I saw some giggles from the seats at the confused teacher's reaction. I turned back around as I was about to leave the room to see her waving me back over, still a lot of students filing in. I go back over. How do you work this? I don't see any switches or anything, and don't hear my voice getting louder. She actually said this all trying to speak into the microphone, as if the sound would magically be amplified in mid-air. I smirked. Oh, you want it to make you louder? Well, for that, you're going to need, I actually did air quotes, all that other stuff. She still looked confused, but I could tell light was starting to creep into her brain. I turned and again started on my way out while she called out, wait. I guess I need, wait. I could have been a prick and just walked out from there, but the students didn't deserve any bad because of their stupid teacher. I had brought one of our portable sound systems with me to the lecture hall, but kept it outside the room. I walked back in and set it up in about 3 minutes, placing the unit on a tripod, the mic on a boom stand, and an XLR cable connecting the mic to the system. I gave it the briefest of sound checks by simply saying, loud noises. Thanks, Anchorman, and turned to go for good this time. During the quick setup, Speech Lady was apologizing to me until she was blue in the face, but then she gained her composure quickly after my sound check. She turned out to be cool, writing me an email apology of sorts and thanking me for my help after her supersized class. My coworker took a long break and said she didn't care if I did the same. So I did. Many years ago I worked at a gas station. It wasn't a big, fancy station. No. It was a satellite of a grocery store. Nothing more than a tiny kiosk next to a dozen pumps. I have a lot of stories about that place, but only one is really appropriate for this sub. My coworkers ranged from cool to worthless. This story is about one of the worthless ones. Let's call her Sandy. Sandy was fairly new to our kiosk but not to the job, having transferred over from another gas station in the company. Right out of the gate this was a problem. She had her way of doing things and we had ours. Naturally, Sandy expected all of her new coworkers to change to suit her, not the other way around. One day it was me and Sandy on the afternoon shift. There were only ever 2 employees, only enough space for 2 people in that shack of a gas station, so we covered each other's breaks. Normally, because I'm a team player, I would take my breaks in the little office in the back. If my coworkers needed me all they had to do was yell. But on that particular Friday, Sandy and I had a problem. She decided to take both of her breaks at once. It wasn't uncommon for us to take a 45-minute break instead of a half and a 15, but it was something we had to clear with our coworkers before doing. It was also against company policy, but we didn't really care about that. An hour before rush hour, the busiest time of day with the largest concentration of shitty customers, she wanted to take her break. That's fine. Nothing wrong. I told her I would take my half hour after hers, then we'd both run tills for the rush. Half an hour came and went. She didn't come back. Another half hour during which I should have been on break, still not back. Another 15 minutes, she comes in and gets on till. No apologies for taking a long break unannounced, or for coming back late from that long break. When I mentioned it, she replied, "I don't know why you're getting so pissy, all you ever do is sit in the back. And I wouldn't get upset with you if you took a long break." So I told her, "I'll hold you to that." Then I walked out. I bought a paper, went down the street to Edo, sat down with a big bowl of noodles and veggies and took my sweet time. All the 9-to-5ers on their way home from work were her problem. Exactly 45 minutes after I left, I made sure it was to the minute, I walked back into the kiosk. Sandy was not behind the till. My manager was. Apparently Sandy couldn't handle the situation and started crying. I don't know if it was me just walking out, the workload or any particular customer that got to her. My manager was called, drove into town and took over until I came back. Let's call her Tam. Tam wasn't angry with me. Not anymore, at least. She was pretty pissed when she showed up to relieve Sandy. Poor girl had to be sent home, but she had found a brief window in which to check the security cameras. It turns out Sandy told her that she had taken her half-hour break earlier, then I didn't bother taking mine until the rush because I didn't want to work. Tam decided to check that on the cameras, and by the time I came back she already knew Sandy was lying to her. I didn't have to say a thing in my own defense. Sandy was punished for the long break and the lying, but was not fired. However, on the rare occasion we were scheduled together afterward, she took her breaks when and for how long I told her to. Good times. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.